Welcome to Caregiving and Conversations, Miss Tiff Unfiltered. I cannot believe that I'm finally here. I've finally launched the podcast. So many people have asked me to launch a podcast to tell my story, and I wasn't ready. And today I am ready. It wasn't that I wasn't ready because I didn't have a story to tell. It was because I wasn't ready to tell my story. My story is me being vulnerable. My story is sharing personal parts of caregiving, how I felt, things that happened while caregiving, the trials, the tribulations, the ebbs and flows, all of the things that come with it. And I just wasn't ready. Now that I'm in a really good place, I can actually tell my story. I'm not going to say that there won't be any tears. There probably will be some tears. There's going to be some laughter. There's going to be something that I say that's going to resonate with you. And again, remember, this is my story, okay? All right, so now that we got that out of the way, so this is going to be a very casual conversation that I have. I'm inviting you into my home, and we're just going to sit back. We're going to chat, all right? All right. So before we get started, I like to do what I call a two-word check-in. A two-word check-in is, how are you actually feeling today? A lot of times people say, how are you? And the common response, especially for caregivers, is, I'm fine. All right. Well, a lot of times we're not fine, but this is you taking the time to be very intentional about how you actually feel. So today, my two-word check-in is anxious and excited. I am anxious because I'm starting the podcast, and I'm excited because I'm starting the podcast. All right, so who am I? The titles that I wear: I am a daughter, I am a sister, I am an auntie, I'm a niece, I'm a cousin, I'm a friend, I am a life coach, I am also a caregiver. Who I am at my core: I am compassionate, I am authentic, empowering, intentional, caring, kind. That's just to name a few. So people ask a lot of times, what is caregiving? And there are two types of caregivers. There's the caregiver that is formal. There's a caregiver that is informal. Formal caregivers are those nurses, personal care assistants, anyone who is getting paid to care for someone else. Informal caregivers are those non-paid people. Those are the family members, those are the neighbors, those are the friends that come to help those who need help. Caregiving can be part-time, caregiving can be full-time. Caregiving can be for one day, or caregiving can also be for 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, indefinite. There's no saying, right? So this is my journey of being a caregiver to my mother. So let's start in the beginning. How did I become a caregiver? I think it was always in my DNA. Um, as a child, my first job, babysitting, of course. Many of us had those jobs of babysitting, which is actually caring for someone else. Then it went into working as a youth worker at the Summer North Commons, yay, North Commons. Um, Went from a youth worker to teaching babies how to swim at the YWCA, to working in a bank as a teller, to eventually becoming a flight attendant. Again, another form of caregiving, taking care of people, not necessarily because they're not able to take care of themselves, but making sure that they're good not to cause harm to themselves on a plane. It's just a glorified caregiver. But all along, all my jobs have been service. I'm always serving, always doing, always caring for other people. So I think it's just something that I was just born with, of service. That's what caregiving is, being of service to someone else. Um, I'm going to talk about my grandmothers for a minute. And the reason I want to talk about them is because they were caregivers. To me, they were just grandmas. I have my grandma Louise and my grandma Moore. My grandma Louise is my maternal grandmother. My grandma Moore is my paternal grandmother. I had the best of both worlds with both of my grandmothers, and watching them care for others, whether it was actually being a caregiver for someone through illnesses and diseases or whatever, or just caring for someone, um, opening up their home to people, um, taking them for rides. My grandma Louise, though, she didn't drive. So a lot of times we were caring for her by taking her somewhere to drive. I got my driver's license at 16. I would take my grandma Louise to her doctor's appointments, to the pharmacy to pick up her prescription drugs, to work, wherever she wanted to go. During that time, though, what I was actually learning was patience. I was learning to be compassionate. I was learning to actually serve someone. At the time, I did not call it caregiving. I called it taking my grandmother where she needed to go. Um, the bonus was if I did that, I always got the keys to the car and I could drive and use it in my own personal time to go hang out with my friends. But it was a lesson learned that I was caregiving at that time, because if anybody knows my grandma Louise, my grandma Louise did any and everything on her own time. So even if she said she would be ready at 2, she probably wasn't going to be ready till 3:15. But you better be at her house at 2 o'clock to pick her up. If she said she just needed to go one place, you were going to take her to 5 different places. Excuse me, if that's where she wanted to go. So yeah, I learned a lot of patience during that time. But it was also building relationship, building memories with my grandma. Again, um, wasn't calling it caregiving. It was just being a granddaughter. On the other hand, I had my grandma Moore. My grandma Moore knew how to drive. She did drive, and she would drive people wherever they wanted to go. She took care of her own mother as she aged. She took care of her mother in love, her sister in love, and I watched this. From the outside in, I was learning what it took to be a caregiver. It took a lot of patience. It's a job that is very thankless. And my grandmothers both did it with joy. They did it with joy. They did it from their heart. And I was learning that throughout the time, how to be a caregiver, how to serve others. And I was very fortunate. Um, my grandma Louise passed away when I was 25 years old. Talk about a defining moment in your life. I had never lost anyone that was that close to me. Um, and to me, she died too young. She was supposed to stay here forever if I had my way. One of the things that helped me was I still had my grandma Moore. So I was able to take some of that love that I had for my grandma Louise and pour it into my grandma Moore. Unfortunately, 5 years later, my grandma Moore became sick. And again, I watched the family rally around her and care for her 24 hours out of the day. My aunts, my uncles, my grandfather, we all were there when we could be there um, until she passed away. You talk about ebbs and flows. You talk about defining moments. That was another defining moment of no longer now having two grandmothers. It was hard. It was hard. But again, you have to keep going. You have to, life still happens. And so, on one hand, my grandma Moore was sick and death was near. But on the flip side, my youngest brother, I have two brothers, two younger brothers, and I'm going to call them Brother P and Brother J. Brother Jay was on his way to college. He graduated. We as a family, and I say family, me, my brothers, and my mom, we were preparing him to get to FAMU and start a life. We poured so much into him, and we wanted him to make it. Again, another form of caregiving, but quite just just a little different. But it was grieving on one end and excitement on the other. Remember that two-word check-in I talked about? Two things can be true at one time. And so we get my brother off to college successfully. He's happy, um, flying back home. And I remember my mom making a comment that she finally gets to live her life. You see, my mom was a teenage mother. She had me at 16 years old. At this time, she had been a parent for 30 years, and she had never lived on her own. She always had kids with her. My mom also had a revolving door at her house. So I watched my mom care for her own mother. I watched her care for family members. Um, that revolving door was for her was friends that came over, family that came over, her kids, our friends, anybody needed a place to stay, whether it was for a day, 2 days, a week, a month, a year, it didn't matter. As long as my mom had a roof, a couch, a floor, an extra bedroom, her house was open. And I watched her care for people very up close and personal. What I did not realize is that the roles would change and then I would become a caregiver for my mother. Shortly after my brother went away to college, my mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, also known as MS. It is a chronic autoimmune disease which attacks the central nervous system. My point of reference at this point for Richard Pryor was my point of reference was Richard Pryor. Um, he was in a wheelchair. He couldn't talk. I mean, he couldn't walk. He could barely talk. And that's all I thought about MS. I did not know absolutely anything about MS. And what I knew at that moment was I did not want my mom to live this life with MS. Um, it was a hard diagnosis. A lot of times the diagnosis is for that actual person. What people really don't talk about is how that diagnosis affects people in the family. And everybody is going to take that diagnosis differently. Some people are going to be up close and personal. Some people are going to pull away. Some people are going to do a combination of two. Some people are just going to be like, let me just give you money because I don't want to deal with it. Some people are going to be like, hey, I ain't got no money, but what can I do for you? Everybody has a different way. Some people are going to act like it didn't even exist or the diagnosis didn't happen. So we'll be talking about that on future episodes of Caregiving and Conversations. The diagnosis, actually, that should be a topic. But anyways, so my mom gets this diagnosis. And again, all I'm thinking is Richard Pryor with multiple sclerosis. And part of me was actually hurt because I had this great relationship with my mom and I didn't even know why she was being tested for multiple sclerosis. Like, what was her symptoms? Why did she decide to go and get tested? Um, was multiple sclerosis hereditary? Am I going to get it? And all these questions like, what ifs? What's going to happen? What's going to happen with my brother in college? What's going to happen with my mom's house? What's going to happen with her health? What's going to happen? It was all these what ifs. And I remember going to the neurologist's appointment with her, and she was sitting to the left of me. She, as in my mom, was sitting to the left of me. The neurologist was sitting across from us at the table over his desk. And I remember him saying, with the form of multiple sclerosis that your mother has, her short-term memory is going to kick in, which is a form of dementia. And there would be a time where she won't remember who her kids are or her grandkids. And I was like, whoa, whoa. Um, but my mom was she was also adamantly did not want to take any kind of prescription drugs for the multiple sclerosis. Her reasoning was because there was not any cure for multiple sclerosis. It was only to slow down the progression. She didn't want to put that kind of drug in her body. And me and my brothers, we honored her. We honored her. I didn't want to for my own personal selfish reasons because it became the thoughts of what about me? Um, I remember us leaving that doctor's appointment, and it was a quiet ride home, one of those silences that is totally 100% uncomfortable. And although the car ride was silent, there was loud noises going on in my head. And all I kept thinking, or what I was feeling more than thinking anything, was um, rage, anger, hurt, fear, um, sadness, love. And then it became, what about me? What does this look like for my future? At this time, I was unmarried. I didn't have any children. I was the only girl. I was the oldest. So naturally, the responsibility was going to be mine. Did I want that responsibility? No, I did not. Um, but my mom had three children, and one was in college, and I was the girl. So that responsibility became my responsibility. I became a full time caregiver, not knowing what I was doing. There's no handbook to say, hey, you're now a caregiver. Here's steps one, two, and three. There's none of that. And so I did a lot of things by trial and error. I'd made a lot of knee jerk decisions because my mom had her first flare up of multiple sclerosis where her walking was altered. And that was the day that I became a full time caregiver. Let's put a pin here because I'm only going to give partial stories. My goal here in this podcast is to create a community and to tell my story. So my story is going to be of short stories leading up to where we're at today. And in between that, though, I'm also going to bring people on. I'm going to bring other caregivers on. I'm going to bring doctors on, therapists on, people who work in social services that have resources. So it won't just be me sitting here giving you just my story. Um, but if you have a story idea, by any means, drop it in the chat and give me some ideas. While you're in that chat, though, also subscribe. Subscribe to Caregiving and Conversations. Once you subscribe, share it. Share with other caregivers. Share this podcast with um, friends, family, anyone, everyone. Just share it. My goal is to create a community of caregivers, to create a community for people who support caregivers. Whether you're a caregiver today, you might, or whether you're not a caregiver today, you might be a caregiver tomorrow. So my goal is to create this community here so you can hear stories of caregivers and what we go through, the support we receive or the support we don't receive, the thoughts that we have, any and everything in between, and not just from us, from our own stories and experiences, but bringing people in to talk about their caregiving story and how they've launched it into businesses. So it's gonna. I'm so excited about it that that's the excitement that I talked about with my 2-word check-in. But that's it for today. So I want to leave you with this. I'm Miss Tiff, and remember, give yourself grace, give yourself rest, give yourself self-care because you deserve it too. Until next time, bye-bye.